They told you the light was somewhere else, hidden in temples, locked behind scripture, owned by saints, reserved for the pure. But what if the light was never out there at all? What if salvation is a mirror turned backward? A code meant to lead you home, inverted so subtly you started searching for yourself in someone else's image. You're standing in a quiet church aisle after the crowd has gone. Candles flicker, incense and dust hang in the air. You ask, not aloud, but inside, am I closer to God yet? No answer, only breath. And yet, something moves, a pulse, a warmth you can't explain. Maybe it isn't absence, maybe it's remembrance. If the light isn't missing, what exactly have we been chasing? Every generation hears the same script. Obey, repent, wait for the reward beyond the veil. But beneath it, your soul resists. Another version knocks, not guilt, but awakening, not earning light, but recognizing the inner light already alive in you. And if the kingdom within wasn't poetry but instruction, a practical way to begin from the inside? From this moment on, you test every holy answer against the warmth in your chest. The world built high walls around an open door. Rules became ladders. Ladders became prisons. Yet if you're here, some part of you remembers the path before it was paved over. You aren't here to collect beliefs. You're here to uncover what was buried beneath them. As you listen, the question changes from "Where is God?" to "What part of me forgot I was divine?" Some call this recognition gnosis. To the heart, it feels like a simple click. Christ within, the current turning on inside. Beneath verses and rules, beneath cross and crown, the original code still pulses. In another room of the story, a softer name waits, the sacred feminine Sophia, not as a slogan, but as invitation. Hear it once, and nothing sounds the same. Next, I'll show you the tiny switch that turned revelation into ritual and how to flip it back. They told you light and darkness were enemies, that one must destroy the other for the world to be redeemed. But what if the war was never outside you? What if the battlefield was your own perception? Every empire begins by defining the enemy, and every religion learns to do the same. So they turned the mystery of the inner world into a story of outer conflict. They called it good versus evil, faith versus heresy, heaven versus earth. But in that split, something sacred was lost, the knowing that both are mirrors of one current, one breath, one consciousness. The ancient teachers called it the Great Inversion, not the fall of humanity, but the reversal of awareness, the shift from direct experience to borrowed belief, from seeing to merely agreeing. It was never a single event. It was a slow drift, like a dream you forget while waking. You began to look upward instead of inward, to seek approval instead of alignment, to worship symbols while forgetting the source that gave them power. And when that happened, the sacred code inverted. In the sands of Egypt, the ruins of Nag Hammadi still whisper. Clay jars sealed for centuries, a desert scriptorium by lamplight, and inside fragments of the forgotten pattern. The kingdom is within you, and it is outside you. It wasn't a promise of later. It was a coordinate of perception. Start within, and the outer rearranges. The first Gnostics saw this not as rebellion, but remembrance. They spoke of a world where the divine wasn't a ruler above, but a current within, flowing through the ordinary, the hidden, the human. From this point on, you test every holy rule against the warmth in your chest. If it closes your heart, it isn't truth. If it opens you, even a little, it's the path back. Because what was inverted was never just doctrine. It was your compass, not a fall from heaven, a drift from awareness, a compass turned outward. The Great Inversion was never about losing God. It was about forgetting where to look. And once you see that, the illusion begins to crack. If the code inverted, where did it first leave its trace? Imagine a mirror, ancient, hand-polished, once clear as still water. It didn't just reflect your face. It reflected your origin, your essence, your place in the living current of creation. In that mirror, there was no distance between you and the divine, no ladder to climb, no gatekeeper to please, just recognition, being. Light recognizing light. But over time, dust gathered. Not all at once. A thin film here, a layer there. A doctrine repeated without understanding. A fear planted in childhood. A voice whispering, "Don't trust yourself." Dust. Another saying holiness belongs to others, not you. Dust. And slowly you forgot the mirror was ever clear at all. You mistook the dust for your reflection. You started calling the blur truth. This is how forgetting works. Not through force, but through quiet accumulation. Through repetition, through the slow surrender of inner knowing to outer noise. What happens if you treat doubt like dust, not as a verdict, but as something you can wipe away? Because here's the quiet miracle. The mirror never stopped being what it was. Beneath every layer, the clarity remained untouched. That's why moments of stillness feel sacred. Why certain questions pierce deeper than logic. Why some nights you lie awake sensing a truth you cannot name. Truth lands first in the body. Meaning arrives later. Remembrance doesn't return with thunder. It comes like breath, steady, patient, undeniable. And when a community polishes their mirrors together, clarity multiplies. Recognition spreads faster than fear. Name the dust out loud, and someone near you remembers their mirror too. Each act of noticing becomes contagious. One light revealing another, one truth awakening the next. And the dust? It only has power when ignored. The moment you see it, it loosens. The moment you question it, it falls away. The divine was never missing, only obscured. You don't become luminous. You remember you always were. When was the last time you felt a truth in your body before your mind had words for it? When something inside nodded before you understood why. That was the mirror speaking. That was you before the dust. And it's starting to shine again. Every age has its guardians. Not the ones standing at temple doors, but the ones living quietly in your mind. They don't wear robes or carry keys. They sound like the soft click of a door you didn't realize you closed yourself. Their voices are gentle. Be careful. Don't question too much. Stay within the lines. These are the subtle gatekeepers. They're not enemies, but echoes, fragments of a world that once feared what it could not control. At first, they sound like protection. They promise safety, belonging, order. But beneath that calm tone lies a quiet bargain. Surrender your knowing, and you will be accepted. Trade your direct connection for second-hand truth, and you'll be called faithful. That is how the inversion sustains itself, not with force, not with fear, with your silent agreement. The moment you believe that wisdom must pass through permission, the door closes without a sound. Name one rule you obey when no one is looking, and ask who benefits, because there's always a moment when the whisper of doubt slips through the cracks. You feel it when your soul hungers for something no doctrine can feed. You feel it when you realize the map you were handed doesn't match the terrain of your own heart. That's the beginning of rebellion, not against the world, but against forgetting. An ancient text once said, "Bring forth what is within you, and what you bring forth will save you." It was never poetry. It was the escape code from an invisible contract, the reminder that no authority can mediate your divinity. From now on, you sign nothing with your silence. The Gnostic teachers knew this truth, frightened power. Because the moment you turn inward, the gatekeepers fade. You begin to see that they were never protecting the truth, only distracting you from it. So ask yourself again, whose voice is speaking when you hesitate to trust your own? Whose rules still bind you when no one's watching? The gatekeepers can only exist in silence. Once named, they vanish like shadows at dawn. And what's left is the open sky, vast, quiet, waiting for your first breath of freedom. When you stop signing, something else lights up. If the inner door opens, what does the first spark feel like? There comes a moment in every life when the outer light fades, when the voices that once guided you grow faint, and the paths you were told to follow led nowhere. It feels like loss. It isn't. Because when the outer lights dim, the inner flame begins to reveal itself. It doesn't shout, it hums. Low, steady, ancient. That flame has been with you since before language, before names. It's the same fire that burned in prophets and poets, in Mary sitting silently at dawn, in Christ withdrawing into the desert. It begins as warmth, then a quiet brightness, then the hush of a candle that remembers how to burn. It is the unbroken lineage of those who dared to listen inward when the world demanded they obey outward. The world called them heretics. Heaven called them rememberers. The return of the inner flame is not an event. It's a shift in gravity. What once held power over you begins to lose weight. Fear stops feeling sacred. Guilt stops feeling holy. You begin to see how easily the system was built. Keep people afraid of their own light, and they'll never notice who profits from their blindness. The flame you carry is not rebellion. It is restoration. Try this. Before you speak, before you scroll, before you reach for another answer, pause. Feel the warmth behind your ribs. Breathe into it as if it were a candle you once forgot. Let it glow again, steady and sure. From now on, you light the candle before you ask the question. That small act breaks centuries of programming. Because every breath of remembrance weakens the lie that said you were separate, and when you start living from that inner flame, everything begins to shift. You stop asking for permission to shine. You stop mistaking noise for guidance. You begin to walk not by borrowed light, but by your own radiance. The world around you starts to change shape, quietly responding to your glow. Listen. And once the flame steadies, reality starts speaking back. It begins quietly, not as thunder or revelation, but as a pattern surfacing beneath the noise, the same street light flickering at the corner, the same name on 2 receipts, the same line of a song following you into an elevator. It's as if reality itself is trying to get your attention. The ancient Gnostics called this language the living code, a conversation between the divine and your awareness, written not in ink, but in synchronicity. The code doesn't speak to the mind that demands proof. It speaks to the soul that remembers rhythm. Every coincidence, every flicker of intuition, every flash of déjà vu is a line of that ancient script unfolding again. The world calls it random. The awakened call it recognition. You don't understand first. You recognize first. You begin to see that awakening isn't about escaping the world. It's about decoding it. The symbols were never outside you. They were always reflections of your own frequency. When you shift, the world shifts. When you open your heart, the message rearranges itself around your awareness. That's why the same verse you've heard 1,000 times suddenly pierces you like it's brand new. The code activates the moment you are ready to see. Stop interpreting, start noticing. Because here's the paradox. The more you try to force understanding, the quieter it becomes. The code doesn't yield to control. It yields to presence. It reveals itself when you stop searching and start noticing. When your attention softens, when you start listening between the words, the living current begins to hum beneath everything. For the next 24 hours, note one pattern that repeats. Give it a title in 5 words. That title is your doorway for the week. Post your 5-word title below. It helps this circle find itself again. Someone else may be carrying the missing line of your code. Then, watch what happens. You start to realize creation was never a command but a collaboration. God speaking through your perception, inviting you to co-create through consciousness. The code doesn't tell you what to believe. It reminds you what you already know. And as you follow its thread, one truth becomes undeniable. You were never meant to be a follower of light. You were meant to remember that you are light, intelligent, responsive, alive. The awakening code isn't written in books or carved in stone. It's inscribed in your very being, waiting for the moment you stop doubting the language of your own soul. But what happens when the current that once flowed out starts flowing back through you? For thousands of years, the world has taught you to reach upward, to climb toward heaven, to bow toward authority, to look to thrones and temples for permission to exist. That is the oldest inversion of all. The moment you believe divinity lives somewhere above you, power began to flow away from you. Not stolen, redirected, subtly, systematically. The greatest empires were not built by force, but by conviction. The conviction that you were small. The reversal of power begins when that belief cracks. When you stop asking what the divine thinks of you, and start asking what the divine feels through you. When you realize that faith is not obedience but resonance. Christ never said, "Follow me into submission." He said, "Follow me into remembrance." The difference is everything. The world's systems thrive on borrowed light. They convince you to trade awareness for approval, to exchange your fire for favor. They turn the sacred current into currency, devotion into debt, worship into hierarchy. But there comes a moment when the current reverses direction. You feel it first as dissonance, then as liberation. You stop feeding the outer altars and begin tending the inner one. Not borrowed, not bargained, not delayed. No more thrones above. No more permissions to beg. No more light on loan. Power was never meant to be a pyramid. It was meant to be a circle, every being a reflection of the same center. The Gnostics understood this long before kingdoms rose. That's why their texts were buried, their names erased, their memory branded heresy. Because a humanity that knows its own divinity cannot be ruled. A soul that remembers its source cannot be bought. Hear it in the hush after a slammed door, in the quiet room where no one is left to please. So when the reversal begins in you, expect resistance. The outer world will test your alignment. Old fears will whisper, "Who are you to stand in your own light?" But ask it back, "Who am I not to? Stand where your feet are. Speak from the center." Each time you refuse to kneel before illusion, the current grows stronger. You stop revolving around power, and power begins to revolve around you. If this flame is already moving in you, leave a single sign below, "I carry the light." It helps the algorithm find the others and rebuild the circle. Let your radiance include what you once opposed. You don't overthrow, you outglow. That is the hidden restoration. Not rebellion, but return. The throne was never above. It was always within. Remembrance is not about learning something new. It is the slow unbinding of everything false that was wrapped around the truth. It happens quietly, not in temples or ceremonies, but in the still pauses of ordinary life. In the car when the noise fades. In the shower when a thought feels older than time. In the eyes of a stranger that feel like home. That's remembrance. The divine recognizing itself through you. You were never meant to chase enlightenment. You were meant to remember what wholeness feels like. The fall was never exile from God. It was descent into forgetfulness, so that waking up could become the purest act of creation. Every memory of light you reclaim reshapes the world around you, because consciousness doesn't just witness reality, it writes it. Here lies the hidden miracle. Awakening doesn't remove you from life, it roots you deeper into it. You begin to taste holiness in the smallest things, The breath before a word, the warmth of sunlight on skin, the silence between heartbeats. Truth shows up in the body first. Warmth before words. You start to see that the sacred was never hiding in temples, it was hiding in attention. The illusion of distance begins to dissolve. Prayer turns into awareness. Worship becomes participation. You stop asking for light and start realizing you are its ongoing current. The divine was never waiting for you to be worthy. It was waiting for you to stop forgetting. So pause. Place your hand over your heart. Feel the rhythm behind your chest. That quiet, eternal pulse that has never left you. Say it once as entry, twice as embodiment, a third time as promise. I am the returning flame. This isn't a mantra to repeat. It's a doorway to walk through. Each whisper clears the dust, rekindles the fire, restores the code. The forgotten Christ, the hidden Sophia, the sacred within all things. They are not out there. They are breathing through you, right now. Carry this remembrance gently into the noise of the world. Let it live through your words, your choices, your silence. Let each choice widen the circle, not just brighten the room. And when you're ready to go deeper, step into the hidden chamber, weekly practice threads, shared prompts, and a place to keep the fire steady. If this message stirred something in you, let it be seen, like this, so the message reaches those still searching in the dark. Subscribe to stay inside the current we keep together. Every new voice strengthens the circle. Every spark keeps the fire alive. The story of light was never lost. It was only waiting for you to return to it again.